Chapter 750, Source of Life. After a few seconds, Lugano stuttered, "Can you actually eat that? What happens if you do eat it? What are the changes? Does it cause the child of God to be born?" Lumion glanced at Lugano's arm and said, "What can't be eat?" Lugano suddenly felt a sharp phantom pain and shook his head vigorously. No, never mind. He wanted to get away from Ludwig and Lumion, but couldn't think of an excuse on the spot. After Ludwig swallowed a mouthful of cheese bread, he spoke slowly. "Top-tier ingredients don't need much accompaniment or seasoning. We just need to give it a symbol. That includes 9 main staple ingredients: wheat, oats, rye, rice, potatoes, sweet potatoes, corn, cassava, and any other kind of bean. Cook them with the umbilical remains in cow's or sheep's milk for half an hour, and it's ready to eat. This dish is called Source of Life." "Are you cooking or performing a mystical rite?" Lumion muttered under his breath. Of course, a gourmet pathways chef, who concocted alcoholic beverages and cooked various dishes, was essentially conducting corresponding mystical rites. Thoughtfully, Lumion asked, "Actually, it doesn't have to be these 9 ingredients, right? As long as the concept of main ingredients and their quantity is satisfied. Likewise, other kinds of milk would work too." Ludwig shook his head. "No, this way tastes the best." "So what you're saying is, the method I mentioned would work but won't taste as good?" "No. Wonder it's the gourmet pathway, always chasing culinary perfection." Lumion stood up and instructed Lugano to buy some of the ingredients. Lumion's traveler's bag only contained dry rations that could be eaten right out of the package. For Trier, a leading global metropolis, the ingredients Ludwig needed were easily collected. And by noon, Lumion and Lugano had returned to see Ludwig placing the main ingredients, along with the umbilical remnant, into a stew pot filled with several hundred milliliters of milk. These steps had to be completed by a chef himself to endow them with mysticism, to coax out the designated uniqueness of the ingredients and maintain them to a degree conducive to absorption. Done by anyone else, the dish might have no effect or turn into poison. After simmering for a while, Lumion smelled the starchy aroma mixed with the milk and saw dense milky white steam rising above the pot. The steam did not disperse, but condensed in midair and slowly settled back into the pot, carrying a tantalizing scent tinged with blood. At that moment, Ludwig turned to Lumion and licked his lips, asking, "Do you want to add sugar or salt?" "What differences do they bring?" Lumion asked cautiously. Ludwig responded seriously, "The taste, one is sweet, the other is salty. Which do you prefer?" Lumion, sensing the choice, relaxed and asked with a smile, "Which do you prefer?" "I can't eat it," Ludwig said regretfully, mumbling, "Sweet is tasty, salty is good too. If only it could be split into 2 parts, one sweet, one salty." As he spoke, the young boy, seemingly agitated, sprinkled some salt and then tossed in some sugar. Lumion watched amusedly, not stopping him. For him, the taste of the source of life was not important, its effect was. Finally, Ludwig instructed Lugano to extinguish the flame and remove the contents of the pot. It was a palm-sized piece of starchy congealment, white and soft, sticky and gooey. The surface of the food was covered with red spots, as if blood had seeped out from within. "It's ready to eat." Ludwig tried hard not to drool. "Will it be effective with just one bite, or do I need to eat it all?" Lumion asked, his curiosity reminiscent of his days learning various experiments, which often frustrated Auror with his questions. "All of it," Ludwig said with a look of disappointment. Lumion picked up the steaming, slightly scalding food, brought it to his mouth and took a bite. The sweet and salty flavors melded together, offsetting each other's intensity in a unique way that relieved Lumion of any mental burden. He quickly devoured the source of life. "Will it work right away?" an eager Lumion asked, already resolute in his intentions. Ludwig pointed to the master bedroom. "You'll need to sleep first." Sleep, with a slight sigh, Lumion left the dining table, returned to his room, and lay down on his bed. Closing his eyes, he felt his body gradually warm up, his consciousness becoming heavier and heavier. In the darkness, Lumion heard soft sobs. He turned his head, carefully discerning the sound. It was of a little girl whispering, "Mommy, Mommy." The voice grew louder, more mature and more piercing. "Mommy, Mommy." The cries drew closer, as if they were right beside Lumion, resonating within him. Mommy, mommy. Inside my body, Lumion suddenly jolted awake, regaining his senses. The darkness shattered, and sunlight pierced his eyes. He sat up abruptly, freeing himself from the dream. The cries of mommy, mommy, still echoed faintly in his mind. Did I hear the child of God crying? Lumion looked down at himself. He undressed and found nothing unusual, but he knew something about him was different now, an indescribable change. He didn't feel the Great Mother's gaze, which made him even more cautious. Dressed again, he left his room to find Lugano sneaking glances his way. Are you all right? Lugano, who had been caught red-handed, asked instinctively. Lumion chuckled. It's okay, I won't become the child of God of the Great Mother. Seeing Lugano eyeing his stomach, Lumion added, nor have I conceived her. After speaking, he left the still concerned Lugano behind and walked out of the apartment. The afternoon sun was perfect, and with nothing much to do in the next couple of days, Lumion decided to stake out a particular spot. That place was the Trier Catacombs. Knowing that Harrison from Resurrection Island might appear at places associated with death, darkness, dusk, and decay, Lumion's first thoughts were of the Dream Festival and the Trier Catacombs, locations rife with death and dark mysticism. In the first level of the catacombs, by the entrance to the old ossuary leading deeper below, Lumion sat next to a withered, scattered skeleton with a lit white candle, quietly observing each visitor descending into or returning from the depths. Soon, a group of students passed by, spotting Lumion sitting alongside the catacombs' bones. The leader, a tall, thin man with glasses, asked Lumion curiously, "Why are you sitting here?" Lumion casually responded, "I've been down to the lower levels many times and lost interest. Now, I just want to sit here quietly and watch everyone and everybody that comes and goes to see who never leaves." That sounds interesting, the students said, holding their white candles. They decided to sit down too and observe if any of those returning from the depths showed signs of fear. The tall, bespectacled man chose to sit beside Lumion and struck up a conversation. "Do you really think not lighting a white candle here could lead to mishaps?" Lumion glanced at him and chuckled. "You could try it, and we'd all see what happens." Before the students could respond, Lumion spoke in a relaxed tone. "I didn't believe in these things before, but then." He suddenly lowered his voice. Two of the female students blurted out, "What happened?" Then, Lumion wore a reminiscent expression. "I met someone who had encountered the Montsouris ghost. You know the legend of the Montsouris ghost, right?" The students nodded together. "You really know Trier's spooky tales well, typical of underground Trier creatures, students." Lumion sighed. His immediate family all died, and he thought he could escape it. But one day, when I went to see him, I found him hanged from a window frame. Since then, I've been strictly following every rule of underground Trier. The students looked at each other, a bit frightened by the tale told by a peer. "It seems we really shouldn't extinguish this candle," the tall student with glasses said regretfully. Lumion lowered his voice again. "Have you ever encountered such a thing? There are extra books, blankets, and clothes in your dorm, none which belong to you, but the administrator tells you that no one else lives there." Two students turned pale, as if hearing the most terrifying ghost story. As if they were seeking a lifeline, they asked, "Yes, that happens, do you know why?" Lumion shook his head and sighed. "I heard those are the people who extinguished their candles here. They completely vanished, with no one remembering them." Hearing this, the tall student shivered instinctively. Suddenly, he felt something tap his shoulder. He turned to look and saw a ghastly pale skeletal hand. "Ah!" he screamed, jumping up. Lumion pulled back the bone hand he had picked up somewhere, his smile mocking. "You're really scaredy cats, scared already." The students were stunned, and after a while they forcefully said, "No, that was just a reflex." As they seriously considered whether to beat up the prankster, someone came up the stone steps to the second level. He wore a blue top and yellow pants, his face deeply wrinkled and his white hair sparse and dry, holding a short lit white candle. It was an elderly catacombs administrator. Lumion slightly frowned. He had seen this catacombs administrator before in the giant tomb chamber housing the Samaritan women's spring. But the administrator hadn't used a white candle then.